permission to do it. So I take this as a blessing to be here with all of you today. I also want you to know I urge all of you to do one of these, because the very first one of these that I ever did here paid me a great reward from the Lord by doing it. Because I had been here at CrossRoads for about a year and a half and had never asked my wife to go along. We had at that time been together for 35 years and never attended church together. I don't have the time to go into all the reason, but I will tell you, she was a devout Catholic when I met her, and we went to get married in the Catholic church. And the bottom line, they said, even though her dad wanted immensely, no, you can't do it. So after our marriage, her devotion to her church was not nearly as strong, because that priest or that father actually told me when I asked him, the rule was that Marie and I could not be married there, even though she had never been married, had no children, and had done nothing against the Catholic Church, because I was a Protestant married to a Protestant in a Protestant church. That counted as a marriage, so we could not be married there. And I will give that priest a little bit of recognition in the fact that I asked him, the only question I asked was, Father, can you tell me, do you believe that Jesus Christ made that rule up? Or do you think that was made by man? Well, guess what the priest told me? He told me, unfortunately, it probably is a man's law. So, Marie decided when I came here to do this, that I asked her for the first time, would you come and stand with me as I give my testimonial? Because I hoped it would give me the strength not to cry, because I think I told you once before I cried 3 times over Pretty Woman. So this does not always get to be easy for me to do. So with her here, I managed not to cry a single tear. And thank you so much for that, Marie. Now today, she's not up here with me, but I brought one of my best buddies, and that happens to be Augie, one of my 2 shelter dogs, and I still got Marie back there, so hopefully you won't have to watch me cry today either. So, after that reward for doing that, what it was never did I have to ask Marie to come back here. She enjoyed the service so much that she's been coming with me ever since, and I feel like that was the reward that we received from the Lord, because after 35 years now, we're in church almost every Sunday together. And I think you believe like I do. Those of us that pray together stay together. So that's why we're all still here. So today, I have decided to tell you about how and why I came to the CrossRoads. And because this is a church of rehab, I will share my addiction with you. My growth group buddies, I apologize, because some of this you probably have already got here. Because when I got here, Pastor Ron told me, he said, my sermons aren't going to save you. You're going to need to be part of a small group. And almost at the same time I joined, I became part of that group. And it's been almost 5 years for me now that I have participated in that group on Sunday evening. And if you want a great group, there's some place where you can go and say what you didn't believe was right in the sermon, what you did believe was right in the sermon. And you also can get a chance to let people know what's on your mind. And if you need a prayer, you'll get one from that group. So I want you to know that that's the way that group works, and it is a wonderful place to be. So, the next thing I want to tell you about is the reason that I'm here. When I turned 62, I decided I needed to change my life, and because change is very hard for humans, we can be very self-centered creatures. I decided, though, before I started on that tough journey of making change, I gave myself 3 more years to get ready. So I played 250 rounds of golf a year, took my buddy's money playing golf, and then sat down afterwards and spent a couple more hours taking more money from them or giving it back because 5-point pitch is so simple, even my border collie Augie can play. And so pitch is actually more about luck, whereas whereas golf is some skill. So sometimes I gave that money back. So along with a few drinks, I managed to waste away 250 days a year for 3 more years. My golf buddies had bet me that I would never leave the country club and quit playing golf, and I said, "You're wrong about this one." But I never told them why I was leaving. Till at 65, I actually went. The first reason I left was a promise I made to the most important and truly Christian man I have ever known, my father. The promise was, if he quit smoking, which he did, I would return to church rather than being out on the golf course all the time, which I never did. I remember when he passed away in 2001, years after he'd quit smoking, I still had never kept that promise to my dad. And Dad always said, a man is only as good as his word. That hurts and always will, because he wasn't here to see it, because he was a man who got eternal life because of his beliefs. I do believe he knows what I've done now. It took me 13 years to finally keep that promise. Shame on me. The second thing that I felt I must do was I owed this community a lot because of what they had done for my family and myself through their support of our business for over 30 years. So I picked Children of Salina as a way to do that. And so when I got rid of those golf afternoons, I spent those afternoons at Big Brother's Big Sister with a volunteer job that came complete with an office in the basement of their building, doing everything from background checks to help keep our little safe to picking up clothing out of the bins around town. I got to admit, I really hated that one. I think the smartest thing I ever did to help myself stay on track, because I still hadn't found a church, was with all my locker room buddies gone, I went out and I got the best 2 friends I've ever had. Their names are Sevi and Augie. They're the world's 2 greatest shelter dogs, and I learned with them how to do what you promised to do, to take care of something. And so we became the best of friends. And it did help not miss being at the golf course with your buddies, because I grew up in a locker room all the way from junior high in sports right on through college and in sports here, to where I wasn't used to not being around a bunch of guys. And those 2 boys have been important to staying straight and narrow and having something to do other than going to a bar or something and wasting my time. So between the children and the dogs, I was good. Now, for the final and most important part, was to now go back and find the Lord. Because I had a history. My dad had his church and Sunday school. I spent 5 years in a Mennonite college with 16 hours of Bible. So I had a background, but I had walked away from it 40 years ago. And now was back trying to find it. So I was looking for the Lord in a church where I could keep that promise to the most important man in my life, which was my father. The CrossRoads church here was the 5th church I attended once I started that search. And it was a sermon which got my attention on my very first visit that left me wondering, had the Lord told Pastor Ron I'd be here today? Because his sermon was like arrows through my heart. The whole sermon was about my addiction. My addiction may be, as far as I'm concerned, the hardest, not the hardest on your life, but I feel one of the toughest to cure. You can walk away from drugs, alcohol, porn, food, whatever your addiction is, but how do you walk away from what your whole life had been about? I called this addiction the I addiction. I did this. I made this. I helped this person. It was all about, in that sermon that Ron gave, that made me realize that my whole life had been about Mike. That hurt too. I hurt a lot of people. I failed my children by not giving them the same chance my dad gave me to understand the strength that can come from the faith in the Lord. I also felt the pain that I had never, ever, not even once in 65 years of what had been a good life, thanked the Lord for all that he had done for me. Since I got here, which is part of what this church and you people have done for me, I realize that even that can be forgiven. And I can tell you right now, on Sunday, there's no place I'd rather be than right here with all of you. What I say about this church is like every church in the fact that all the people within the church, every church, suffer from the addiction. But what I found in this group that made me so comfortable is, as far as I can tell, every one of us realize we have an addiction and that the Lord is how we're going to solve it. So I think that's what makes this a church with a difference. So, as long as you remember that help will only come with your faith in Jesus Christ, you certainly are in the right place. So quickly, before I finish, I'd like to give you a few thoughts that I believe will help make our church better and your week go better. And some of these thoughts are, if you really want to lift yourself up, the best way is to lift someone else up. The less time you spend on how bad someone else is, the more time you will have to spend on being a better person yourself. A fool dreams of wealth. A wise man dreams of happiness. The greatest waste in the world is the difference between what we are and what we can be. Let's don't waste that. With the strength of the Lord, you can get there. Great acts, remember, are made up of small deeds. We all can do small deeds, so together we can create great acts. So, all these thoughts have been stolen from people much wiser than me that I don't even know. But the last one comes from that most important man in my life, my dad, and he used to say this all the time. Anybody who judges someone by anything other than the size of their heart and their soul is a fool. So, I want you all to know, I love you all, and you are what makes me love this place. And I thank you for your time.